The holidays are here, as signified by the 4 AI horses of the apocalypse, and for gamers that means one thing: scouring Steam sales for the best deals on indie games that you'll collect like Pokemon and never play. But keep an eye out because new releases are still on the way, even in these final weeks of 2024. Indiana Jones makes his first gaming comeback in 15 years. Machine Games says that the story has some connection to Fate of Atlantis, which is the easiest way to get me excited, and Machine Games themselves has been killing it the last few years with their Quake and Doom expansions. The Soul Reaver games are getting a remaster with the kind of overhauled visuals that make them look like how you remember them in your head rather than how they actually did. Infinity Nikki is the gacha game for people who just want to play dress up, and that's a lot of people actually. That game is gonna do very well. But how about indie games? Yep, there's indie games, crowded into that tiny galactic Star Cruiser-sized space between sales and holidays to try and grab some attention before the year's out. Let's first go over games that I've talked about before, as a lot of them are finally coming home to roost this month, from Next Fest favorites to the perpetually delayed. There's Anton Blast, the Wario-like that looks closer to the spirit of the Wario Land games than Pizza Tower's speedrun focus. I just recently talked about Symphonia, and I'm curious to see whether the mechanics get iterated on from level to level, or if it focuses more on narrative instead. On Your Tail had that unfortunate last-second delay from November, but I expect it'll turn out just fine. The same goes for Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop, the roguelite machine fix-em-up whose demo was a bunch of fun. Now on to some new games. One of my favorite 2D platformers is Donkey Kong Country Returns Tropical Freeze. And clearly a lot of indie developers agree, as country clones have been popping off the last few years. The latest is Nico Dorico, The Magical World, a jumper with solid visuals and a good feel for the momentum-based platforming that's necessary for any good country clone. There's even some Crash Bandicoot style behind the back levels. But if you're more interested in an Ace Attorney clone, take a look at Paper Perjury, a contradiction-focused adventure novel about an office clerk for the local police that ends up snooping on murder mysteries to the point that she ends up doing detective work herself. The art is sometimes wonky, but still charming, and it's by a solo developer anyway, so of course I give it a lot of leeway there. I played a demo of this a couple of years ago and really liked it, so it's nice to see the game finally reach the finish line. This next one stretches the definition of indie title since it is a licensed game, but there's a lot to get excited about for the upcoming Power Rangers game Rita's Rewind. Licensed brawlers have been making a comeback in the last couple of years, but the quality variance has been a real roller coaster. Thankfully, this one is in the hands of Digital Eclipse, the developers of The Making of Karateka, the Llama Soft Anthology, and the Wizardry remake. So they have retro chops, and unlike G.I. Joe or Toxic Crusaders, this one looks to be the real deal. I'm now going to recommend a game that is completely outside of my wheelhouse, but I know this series has its passionate fans, so let's talk about Creeper World IXE. The Creeper World games are this odd mix of real-time strategy and tower defense, where instead of fighting off monsters or spaceships or machines or dinosaurs, you're fighting liquid. The Creeper is this rapidly expanding alien fluid that slowly devours planets, and your goal is to push it back. Most of the Creeper World games are top-down, but this one is viewed from the side, and includes actual offense in the form of various ships, leaning more into the RTS side of gameplay as you liberate planets by reaching their IXE cores. Again, I'm a bit out of my element here. I do like tower defense games, but this is certainly a very unique looking take on the genre. Another one that is outside of my wheelhouse, but I just can't ignore it, is Path of Exile 2, the long-awaited sequel to the action RPG clicker that stole away thousands of hours from loot freaks everywhere with a sheer amount of excess, and the sequel is poised to do the same. Poe 2 has an astounding 1,500 skills to its skill tree and over 100 bosses to fight in its campaign. The fact that you can play co-op with 6 people almost feels modest in comparison. I'd expect it to be like 20 people at this point. While other free-to-play or live service games keep flopping, Path of Exile 2 is surely going to skyrocket to the top of the charts for many months to come. How about something less ridiculously maximalist? This game isn't actually from 2024, but the developer reached out personally to me with some kind words, and it just got a Switch port, so I thought I'd talk about this one because it is thematically appropriate. Mission in Snowdriftland is a Mario-style platformer with the unique hook of also being an advent calendar, so you can play a level a day, collecting all the snowflakes in the level and rescuing ancient video game artifacts, and then you put it down until tomorrow. Or just disregard the concept entirely and play it all at once. You fucking outlaw. The controls are tight and responsive, although you have to get used to the lack of a run button, as the snowman builds up momentum automatically. If you're eagle-eyed, you might even be able to find a heart container or two to extend your life bar. If the level-a-day format appeals to you, you can find Mission in Snowdriftland on the eShop for $9, or on Steam for $6 during holiday sales. Escape Simulator just keeps on trucking with new Mayan DLC to add to the already substantial amount of escape rooms the game has. If you're unfamiliar, Escape Simulator is a community-friendly escape room builder with its own campaign and massive workshop support. People have made entire self-contained experiences out of this, and the developer holds creation contests and community spotlights, while adding new rooms of their own, as well as DLC packs that add new areas and themes to build from. They even have a power wash simulator room they gave away earlier this year. Of all the escape room games I've played, Escape Simulator is by far my favorite, and it sounds like they plan on continuing to support it well into 2025. A more conventional puzzler is the point-and-click adventure The Midnight Crimes, a neo-noir detective game set in a desolate city that plays host to humans, vampires, and other paranormal beings. After the dangers of Ben's job results in the loss of his family, he swears off crime fighting entirely until 5 years later, when a new case resurfaces old connections. I gotta be honest, this one is a very iffy suggestion. The demo was pretty clunky and slow-paced, but the developers seem like they were listening to feedback, so we'll see what happens when the game comes out officially. Then there's Mythwrecked, a narrative adventure about reconnecting the Greek gods who have all forgotten their purpose and relation to one another. You do this by finding various inventory items that might spark a memory, as well as conversational topics that you can use to ask around and learn more information. You have a radar to help you find those treasures, and as you help the gods out, you'll increase your trust level with them, which will get them to open up more. It's a cool little game that seems like it'll be able to navigate that slippery slope between coziness and toothlessness. Alright, let's blitz through a few more. Voin is a fast-paced first-person hack-and-slash that gives you some really powerful abilities and soaring movement. 10 Dead Doves is a survival horror comedy about two backpackers trying to find out why birds are dropping dead along the Appalachian Trail. Garden Trills is a cozy game about birds getting to know their new neighbors in a sky-high condominium, with a little gardening and 3D platforming mixed in. Fantasian sucks. Sorry, I really did not like that game. Now, unfortunately, some games with a 2024 release date clearly aren't going to squeeze into December, so I'll talk about games that will likely slip into 2025. This includes Devolver titles like Baby Steps and the hyper-stylized Skate Story, as well as Thrasher, the sequel to Thumper. Casebook 1899 is a mix of point-and-click adventure and deduction game, and after playing the demo, I think it'll be pretty alright as long as the localization is cleaned up. Azura the Striker may look a bit too anime-pilled, but it's a fun arcade shooter in the grand tradition of Space Harrier and Afterburner. Stick It to the Stick Man is like a playable Flash cartoon from the turn of the century. And Sunkissed City is an urban take on Stardew Valley by Mr. Podunkian, the developer of the underrated first-person roguelite Wasted. But some games won't have slipped far, as you'll be able to get your hands on Aloft, The Root Trees Are Dead, and Hollywood Animal in January. I'll have even more 2025 games to talk about at the end of my Game of the Year video, which will hopefully be coming out on December 31st. And as you're seeing right now, there's going to be some real bangers in there, so you'll want to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to make sure you're notified when it airs. Next week I'll be talking about the underrated PS1 gem, Tail Concerto, and the winner of this month's Patreon Voters' Choice, Tonic Trouble. So keep it tuned right here for more videos, and sign up for my Patreon if you want early access to videos and your name in the credits. That's all for now. Until next time, you'll find me in another castle.